As a quorum of the board is in attendance, I would like to call to order the meeting of the Central Health Board of Managers. The first item of business is public communications. Members of the public who wish to make comments during the public communication portion of the meeting must have registered with Central Health via the online form or by telephone no later than 4:30 p.m. today. Jana, did anyone register to make comments for this portion of the meeting?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have 3 members of the public signed up to participate this evening. And so with that, I'll read the guidelines for public
Thank you, Jana.
To be recognized to speak, you must request a speaking slot using our public communication online registration form or by leaving a voicemail by 4 p.m. the day of the meeting. Individuals are asked their preferred language as they register to speak, and both the online form and voicemail greeting are in English and in Spanish. All speakers will be recognized by name and in the order that their speaking request was received. Please keep your phone muted until you are called on to speak. Please introduce yourself by name before beginning your comments. Also, if your comments will focus on a specific item or issue on the agenda, please indicate the full item number. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Staff will be timing each speaker and will announce when a speaker has reached their time limit. To ensure the efficiency of the meeting, once we have let speakers know that they've reached their limit, we will allow 30 seconds to wrap up their comments before they are muted. Once again, speakers will be muted at 3.5 minutes to ensure the efficiency of the meeting. Speakers may not donate their time to other speakers. As a courtesy to others and to be respectful of time constraints, please try not to repeat other speakers' comments. Depending on the number of speakers and the total time being spent on the public communication portion of the meeting, the board chair may in her discretion impose additional limits on time or comments. Due to the restrictions of the Open Meetings Act, the board may be restricted in discussing any items that are not listed on the agenda for this meeting. The board may choose to set aside any new issues for discussion at a future meeting. And with that, with the guidelines being read, our first person to speak this evening is Renee Collins on behalf of the Health Alliance for Austin Musicians. Ms. Collins, if you're there, you can unmute your line. Let's see.
Correct?
Hi, Ms. Collins.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
This is Renee Collins with HAM, and today I'll be short and sweet, I promise. I am back today to underscore the bold ask that HAM presented to the Central Health Board and staff to increase the Sendero Premium Assistance funding by $641,000 and to also fund our request for the $150,000 that will address increasing access to care for musicians in communities of color, which will be accomplished specifically through partnership and navigation strategies, working with culturally competent partners and utilizing health navigators who will work within these targeted communities. Last week, we spoke about the success of the Central Health Sendero Premium Assistance Program and the work that we do together to provide this underserved musician community with access to care and to help them navigate the increasingly complex healthcare system. To remind you, this program is working and it showcases really true community collaboration between organizations and how we should all be working to address healthcare needs. Today, I want to reiterate just how vital these extra funds we have requested are for the entire music community. During the past week, we have been in multiple discussions with staff talking about the fact that the musicians who are part of this Central Health Sendero PAP program are benefiting greatly, but also about how it helps the overburdened system and how it's helping Austin's music community overall. I have no doubt that these requested increases in Sendero PAP funding and in our grassroots community-based health navigation funding for communities of color will be just as successful. What I cannot emphasize enough is that every year HAM runs out of premium assistance funding. And last year, over 400 musicians who would have qualified for the Sendero Premium Assistance Program were not able to be covered due to funding running out. I would specifically like to request today that the board allocate this additional funding to HAM. Open enrollment starts November 1st, and the time is very short. But once we get this funding assured, we will start working on it. I commit to the staff and to the board that I will work with Central Health staff to create mutually acceptable metrics to to measure the success of the work we are doing, and in particular, to measure the success of our commitment to increasing the numbers of musicians we serve in communities of color. I just want to end by saying that if any of you joined in for Ham Day yesterday, whether it was online streaming or on Fox 7 TV, I think you'll see, and it's just underscoring how vital musicians are to Austin and how much Austin treasures our musicians. Having the support of Central Health with these vital programs is one of the major factors of our success and our success for the HAM program. And we thank you for your past and continued support. If any of you did tune in to HAM Day yesterday, I know you saw us mention you and our other major service providers multiple times.
Ms.
And
Collins,
when we say that we love,
just so you know.
thank you for helping keep Austin music alive, and we really appreciate your support and hope that you will increase the additional funding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our second speaker for public communication this evening is Paul Saldana with the Austin Latino Coalition.
Thanks, Jenna. Good evening. My name is Paul Saldana. I'm one of the leaders and coordinators with the Austin Latino Coalition. Our coalition was established back in 2013 as an alliance of Latino organizations and individuals to promote civic involvement and self-determination. However, for over 20 weeks now, our focus and emphasis as a coalition has been to implement a mitigation plan, public education prevention campaign to address the disproportionate impacts of COVID on our Latino community in Austin, Travis County, and providing access to barrier-free testing, PPE supplies, resources, and support. None of us could have ever predicted or imagined that we would be living through a pandemic, and sadly, this pandemic has certainly unmasked the historic inequities that's faced by our Latino community. Latinos nationally on the state and local level continue to be disproportionately impacted by COVID. We represent the majority of hospitalizations, the cases, and now deaths. More than 200 Latinos in Austin, Travis County have died as we're in week 37 of the COVID pandemic. There are still many in our community who lack access to the basic fundamentals of PPE supplies such as masks and hand sanitizers. We have been in communications with your leadership. We presented a plan shared a copy of our plan that we developed and presented to the city and to your leadership on June 2nd, where we developed a list of recommendations that were focused on access to resources, outreach, prevention, and accountability. And as I mentioned, we have been working as volunteers. None of us are paid. We're all volunteers with full-time jobs, families. And so what has been very disheartening, I'm a native Austinite born and raised, but what has been disheartening is to see that there are still many gaps and voids in the community where volunteers, like the 30 that are part of our coalition, are having to step up to fill the gaps. I know that one of the items that's on your agenda today is to facilitate another collaborative partnership with Austin Public Health. They have failed our community, and I'm here to tell you that. They have failed our community because we have been stepping up to provide many of the support and resources that Austin Public Health and you all should be providing. So I'm disappointed in that regard. I want to share that with you. Like I said, I'm a native Austinite. It is disheartening to see the travesty and to see the look of despair of people in our community that continue to have access to testing and not even able to access PPE supplies from Central Health, Community Care, and from Austin Public Health. I feel like I'm living in a third world country, and I feel like I've been made to be a second-class citizen. And all of this is going on as we start celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. And so instead of the focus being on celebrating the accomplishments and accolades of our Latino community, I'm having to testify in front of you tonight to tell you how many more lives in the Latino community in Austin, Travis County do we need to lose until you all start working in partnership with Austin Public Health to make an impact, to make sure that our people are getting access to the basic fundamentals of PPE supplies and access to COVID testing. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our third speaker, our final speaker for this evening is Mr. Mike Geeslin with Central Health.
Yes, thank you very much, Jan and members. Members, I am here today to provide some happy news for Holly, but some very sad news for us. And this is her last board meeting. She has an incredible opportunity ahead of her, and we wish her well. And I think also maybe a move to a different city at some point. She has just been incredible to work with, and a valuable resource to us. When I first came on board to Central Health, somebody said something, there's these parking garage leases hanging out there, and we really need to get going on those. And so I remember taking those and just literally just throwing them at her, thinking, oh, it's parking garage leases, no big deal. Oh, it was a big deal. And she just waltzed through that and just was just incredible work. But that was the first of many. And so since that time, she has jumped right in fearlessly to some of the most difficult and contentious issues, and all while being extremely professional. Ethics is her North Star, and her work ethic is just phenomenal. And so just, her burning the midnight oil and getting emails that have early AM on it shows that she was dedicated to this healthcare district. And I hope we were your favorite client, Holly. If we weren't, hopefully it wasn't us that pushed across the edge. But if it was, hey, can we talk? But nonetheless, Holly, best wishes, Godspeed, and thank you very much for your service and the example that you set for all of us.
Clearly, as I say, members, can we unmute and have a round of virtual applause for Holly? Everybody, unmute.
Thank you, Holly, for everything.
Holly, I can certainly attest to your dedication and work ethic and burning the midnight oil. We wish you the best, and it's unfortunate that we cannot actually be in your presence, but the virtual round of applause, I think, conveys our sincere appreciation and our best wishes for you. Thank you. Okay, Jana, back to you.
That concludes public communication for this evening.
All right. Thank you very much to all who took the time to come here. We deeply appreciate your commitment to our community, which you evidence by taking your time to come here. We appreciate that. And Jana, thank you as always, and to the rest of the staff. We'll now proceed to the consent agenda. Members, we're moving consent agenda item number 2 to the October agenda. So it will not be considered this evening. That item was take appropriate action on revisions to the Central Health amended and restated bylaws as recommended by the Ad Hoc Policy and Bylaws Committee. So the consent agenda is C1, receive and ratify Central Health investments for August 2020. C3, approve the reappointment of Mr. Hal Katz and Dr. Guadalupe Zamora to the Integral Care Board of Trustees as recommended by the Executive Committee. C4, approve an interlocal cooperation agreement between Central Health and Austin Public Health for collaborative health planning. C5, approve proposed changes to the Central Health value statement as recommended by the Executive Committee. C6, take appropriate action on Central Health historically underutilized business open print hub, closed print hub disparity study as recommended by the Executive Committee. Members, is there a motion? I see Manager Bell, do you have a motion?
I move that the board approve consent agenda item C1 and items C3 through C6.
All right, a motion by Manager Bell. Do I have a second? Manager Valadez?
I'll second, but I just wanted to ask a question about C4. Do I need to pull it or not?
David, can we? It'll have to be pulled if you're asking a question.
It'll have to be pulled, yes.
I have a similar question, but for C3.
Well, then they'll both have to be pulled.
I mean C4, yeah. I'm sorry.
Okay,
C4.
so it's like just one.
Just so it's the same one, C4. So we'll have to pull C4, members.
You could vote on the rest of the items and
Yes.
pass that.
Okay, so Manager Bell, do you want to redo your motion?
I move that the board approve consent agenda item C1 and items C3, C5, and C6.
Okay, is there a second? Is there a second? Manager Valadez? A second. So we have a motion by Manager Bell, a second by Manager Valadez. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Same sign if you're opposed. Any abstaining? Okay, thank you, managers. David, where will that item now appear on the agenda, C4, which was, I can't hear you. David?
Just call C4 right now.
Okay, that's what I
Knock it
thought.
out.
So we will now move to the regular agenda, and I will call item C4 from the consent agenda. Approve an interlocal cooperation agreement between Central Health and Austin Public Health for collaborative health planning. Is there any staff who wants to give us just a brief statement about this? And then I think we had a couple questions.
Yes. Monica can.
Okay, Monica, could you proceed, please?
Yes, this item is this is normally something that Megan Sarmack would be presenting on. This is an item that we have been entering into collaborative work with the City of Austin and Travis County since 2015. This is work where data and planners meet together periodically to collaborate, share data resources. This is a place where we spend a lot of time discussing the Central Health demographic report, and also to organize planning efforts, particularly in spaces where Central Health, the county, and the city all are potentially co-locating, or they're areas that we are have all prioritized in an attempt to not duplicate efforts and to be able to amplify our joint efforts. There was funding attached to this for a time period to purchase a data portal that we all worked on collaboratively. It's $6,666 per organization per year. We no longer have that shared data portal, but we continue to each contribute funds that we can use for joint community engagement efforts, and then other data purchases that or analytics services that we can jointly plan. Historically, these agreements have at times been three-way agreements. This year, there's a separate agreement between Central Health and Travis County, and Central Health and the City of Austin. So we're bringing you this this renewal to the board for adoption.
Thank you, Monica. Members, questions? Manager Valdez, did you have a question? And then Manager Jones? Manager Valdez, you're on mute.
Yes, I'm gonna let Manager Jones go first.
Okay, Manager Jones?
I may want Manager Valdez to go first, but anyway, my question goes to this. In light of what Mr. Saldana said, that was sort of disconcerting to me in terms of the coordination, not so much the focus area, but coordination. So my question goes to, particularly as it relates to COVID, but also other things, what kinds of strategies? I remember when I was at APH, we would meet routinely with the leadership of the department. We talk about strategies by community and the like. What is going on as a result of COVID that makes it sounds like a disconnect, either in terms of what we're doing with APH or the county or the tribe is not coming together to address some of these issues? Because from what I'm hearing, there's not a lot of strategizing and going on, and perhaps I'm wrong, but I really would like to have at another time, not now, sort of an overview with representatives, if possible, from APH and the county to come and talk about what kind of planning are we doing, long-term and short-term, not only in terms of overall, but within populations within our community as well. So I'll just raise that as a concern for us to review later, because some were very concerning to me.
Yes, indeed they were. And thank you, Manager Jones. And I know that there is a lot of planning that has gone on during COVID in the Emergency Operations Center and in meetings that happen anywhere from 2 to 5 to 7 times a week, depending on where we were in the COVID-19 pandemic. But I also know that there are some aspects that are completely outside the control, the purview, the domain, the statutes of Central Health. Mr. Geeslin, did you want to address any of this?
Sure, and I'll speak to the collaboration agreement. In addition to what Monica Crowley had
Thank you.
presented to the committee, can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So in addition to what Monica had presented, this document or this partnership predates the pandemic, and it's the only thing that I'll add is when we talk about coordinating in our focus areas in Eastern Travis County, where we're trying to launch very robust health and wellness centers and really have coordinated services on the non-clinical aspect of what we do in any given area. This is a lot of this work starts here at this spot within this collaboration agreement. And so to that extent, that's, you know, it goes back and has its origins even prior to the pandemic. I know that some of the meetings have been disrupted because a lot of the meetings were in person where you could use flip charts and all this, and so they've had to do some workarounds, but nonetheless, that still exists, and some of which you've seen and heard from in the Eastern Travis County Subcommittee whenever you've been presented with the program development and walking through those basic charts. I don't know if you remember what Rachel Hardigree and Stephanie had presented, but you know, that ties back to this. Now, to answer specifically about the pandemic, Chair Greenberg is correct. A lot of this happens in those weekly meetings that the Emergency Operations Center hosts, because that's ultimately where that's where the governmental authority lies. In this instance, it doesn't lie with Central Health. I think more recently we've been able to catch our breath and think ahead. All right, before this next curve starts to hit and you start seeing increased hospitalizations and starts an infection rates similar to what it looked like back in early June or even sooner, what can we do to get out ahead of it? I think with respect to what the speaker and public communication brought forward, Mr. Saldana, you know, that's really on me, just in terms of doing a better job of working with that organization and understanding where they're coming from, and being a lot more collaborative, and not just from the standpoint of, okay, what's the input that you have, but then turning back around and saying, okay, if we take this particular strategy with Austin Public Health or community care, or fill in the blank, could be other agencies or even other cities, you know, does this address some of the needs or the needs that the Austin Latino Coalition has surfaced? So I think it's just a better job of communication on my part, Manager Jones.
Thank you. We certainly want to do all that we can to.
Well, I'm sorry, Chair Greenberg, I missed an important point, Manager Jones, in answering your question. I think in the Eastern Travis County Subcommittee, and I sent you a text earlier today about collaborative planning and bringing in other governmental entities for a meeting under the banner of the Eastern Travis County Subcommittee. I think because we've started bringing the COVID updates through your subcommittee, we've needed to get a few things under our belt over the past couple of weeks, just with respect to all these meetings that we've been having around the board and budget and so forth. But if you're amenable to it, you know, we need to extend a formal invitation, and really it should come from you as a subcommittee chair to Austin Public Health, and let's pull in Travis County as well to have some conversations around maybe some more specifics about the COVID response, because there's things that really and truly only they could speak to, given that that's where the health authority resides in the government code. But I can happy to talk to you offline about that.
Thank you, Mike. And I
appreciate it. I do want to emphasize it's the entire Eastern Crescent and not any particular subsection of it. So I think that would be a good format, and I will follow up with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you to both of you. I agree. It is the entire Eastern Crescent. And thank you, Mike. We want to be the best community partners and collaborators that we can. And I appreciate your efforts to redouble communication and collaboration. Manager Valadez, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. I want to make a couple of comments, and then I'm going to ask Mike. I have been saying in almost every meeting that we need to do more for what is going on in our minority population or people of color, or at least poverty population of those that are under 200% FPL. Now, I have been to some of the testing and PPE distribution events that the Austin Latino Coalition has had, and I have missed seeing any tables where we would be signing up MAP patients. because that population, I can guarantee you at least 85 to 90% of the people who have been in line, 600 at a time, 600 in one Saturday morning.
Is the question whether or not
The question is why are we waiting in week 32 for Austin Public Health? I'm not being critical right now of Central Health. Austin Public Health has not stepped up to the Latino population, and especially in implementing strategies that would lessen or diminish the impact that has been so significant in our Latino population. And with respect to Central Health and Mike, you know, I don't know why we haven't had a table there for MAP, signing up MAP patients, okay? Because a lot of them are uninsured. And so I want to make sure that we understand that in entering into this collaboration with Austin Public Health, which has not done a good job of implementing strategies to curb the negative impact so significant.
So Manager Valdez, I'm gonna get us to what I think is a question, and I think the question might be, and this might be for Mike, to you or to our outreach staff, is what can we do to, and I know we are at a lot of events, but is there more that we can do to have tables and have outreach at events? Is that your question, Manager Valdez?
No, the first question is, with this interlocal agreement, are we going to be relying on Austin Public Health to implement whatever strategy it deems fit to address the needs and the significant needs that exist in our poverty population, and especially in the Latino population? First question.
Okay.
Second, is there anything that we can do more aside from now doing a formal collaboration, as I have asked for, with the Austin Latino Coalition, because we're still going to be facing more, something more coming down the pipe.
Okay, got it.
I want us to be proactive in curbing that.
Two excellent questions. Staff, can you address those? Because thank you for reframing those for me.
Yes.
Excellent questions.
Well, first of all, I need to, how does this tie back to the agenda item of the interlocal agreement?
Oh, you want me to? I thought, I'm sorry.
No, I think the question did, and that was how that's why I posed the question and Manager Valdez then reframed it, which was helpful. And that is, I think what she's asking you is, under this interlocal agreement that we would be entering into with Austin Public Health, how are we going to be sure?
How are we going to
determine that we're going to get the outcomes that we're seeking? Would that be the way to put it, Manager Valdez?
That's exactly right, because it's not happening now.
All right, let's let Mr. Geeslin.
So again, well, first of all, I'll make a comment on that as well, but this particular agreement is, again, it predates the pandemic, and it's about the collaboration for all of the combined services and not duplicating services that we're trying to push out into Eastern Travis County, particularly those focus areas where we have temporary facilities and are trying to move to longer term solutions. Now, with respect to the pandemic response, I think I would like to bring all this back through the Eastern Travis County subcommittee, because that's where we have moved the COVID piece on this. But instead of us providing updates, Manager Valdez, I need the board to make motions, because I'm going to go back to the start of this pandemic. When we first started communicating with the board, you remember we were meeting weekly and sent all kinds of emails, but you can think back, or just, if you'll accept my representation of a summary. I said our strategy in this is going to be to use our strengths. And because this is under a public declaration of emergency, that you have to look at what's the Emergency Operations Center doing and the Public Health Authority doing. That's from a statutory standpoint. That's where the authority rests. And quite frankly, all of the power, if you will, in terms of what you can make happen in any given locality. So we're going to follow the EOC and what the statutory structure is. We're going to capitalize on our strengths and bring those to the table. Now, we've done that. We have had significant outreach, both in English and in Spanish, and in culturally appropriate ways that goes just beyond language, but really trying to structure everything that we do, whether it's video, media, direct phone calling, because not everybody is connected digitally and doesn't have access to the media. And Ted's team has had people that are making sure that people aren't left on the other side of the digital divide. If you think about the radio spots, I think I may be repeating myself, but some of the flyers, as well as some of the printed social media toolkits, some of the digital social media toolkits. So everything that we've done has always been targeted at it's right by all people, but we're making sure that we're also connecting with the Latino folks that we serve. In fact, even if you just look at the naming of the campaign that we use, Protégase. So, forgive me if I'm not putting the right emphasis on the syllables, but that's one of our strengths. Another strength is in supporting community care. They are one of the largest federally qualified healthcare centers in Texas. They are our largest clinical partner. They see approximately 80% or serve approximately 80% of our patients across the spectrum of primary care. And how do we do that? We have a number of staff that have provided a lot of logistical support. I see Stephanie McDonald on the line, Megan Cermak, Barbara, and many others, and Ted, that have really put their shoulders in. And as well, a lot of people on Ted's outreach team, Yvonne and Jana and Isela, Edwin and others, and Anastasia, that it's all been about trying to amplify what community care can do in the community. Now, as part of that, and to give credit where credit is due, because community care is our partner, they have stepped up and done things that what we hear anecdotally is that other FQHCs and other jurisdictions are not doing this. And I will say Austin Public Health, specifically Dr. Escott as well, has been very complimentary of this because they've heard from their colleagues, as has Director Hayden, again, in other jurisdictions, where there's just not another FQHC that's doing this sort of thing like this to this scale, given their size. And so they're out there testing and doing contact tracing and doing media and outreach right alongside Ted's crew. And so that's another one of our strengths, again, is through our partnership. So that's the long and the short of how we started, formulating the quick response to this pandemic. Now, should the board, and this is a board prerogative, want to go into a different direction, then you need to make a motion.
Okay.
And I need to be able to rely on a majority of the board, Chair Greenberg, and I'll close out here.
Yeah, because we need to move on.
But you need to, be real thoughtful about it. Let's make sure if we're doing something to help a particularly disproportionately impacted community, such as the Latino community, that it's thought through, that you've got input, and that when you send us off in a different direction, we're going to need the space, grace, and money to be able to go in that direction. I would also recommend that you have community care at the table to be able to provide some input as well.
Thank you. So members, I'm going to keep us moving because we're not exactly on topic and it's a much larger discussion. And I'm saying, I've been watching our counsel, David Duncan, he's been giving me that. So we're going to move on. And I'm going to close off discussion on this. I want to thank everyone who has participated, and I want to thank staff for your immense dedication here in community care. And we can craft an agenda item for a committee or for another meeting, and I'll work with Mr. Geeslin. Council's looking at me. So members, we have, do we have a motion?
There has not been a motion yet.
Okay, is there a motion that anyone wants to make? Manager Bell.
I move that we approve an interlocal cooperation agreement between Central Health and Austin Public Health for collaborative health planning.
Okay, is there a second?
Manager Oliver.
Manager Oliver, okay. Manager Oliver, so we've had a motion and a second, okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. I see one opposed. Okay, Manager Valadez. Any abstaining? I see one abstention. Manager Musaitif. Okay. Thank you, members. And I will get with Mr. Geeslin and others offline if we need to have an agenda item that's more specifically focused according to our counsel, David Duncan. Thank you.
At which time we could also invite those representatives
Yes.
to join us. Thank you.
Yes, sir, and Manager Jones. And it could be that it will be in the Eastern Crescent Subcommittee. So we'll see what's the.
Chair,
Yes.
I would recommend that this item be brought to our board meeting because our committee were only 2 individuals. So this is a broader issue and
Okay, Manager
our
Masako.
attention.
Okay, we can certainly, as I said, I will handle this offline with Mr. Geeslin and with our counsel, David Duncan. I appreciate your input, and I am perfectly happy we can bring this back before the board, but we'll need to have the proper agenda item posted. Thank you.
Just
Yes,
one last comment. Thank you very much, Sherry. I just would like to know whether or not we will ever actually see or have a conversation with Stephanie Hayden, because we haven't yet.
Okay, I will take that under advisement, Mr. Geeslin.
Thank you.
Yes, and I think to Manager Jones's point, you know, we really need to formally invite, but also just as a reminder to the board, we don't regulate Austin Public Health.
That's right.
No, we do not.
We work with them, and I have a great deal of respect for Director Hayden, and she's been very responsive to, you know, when I've reached out to her, and I want to make sure that it's in a collaborative spirit on addressing issues and taking lessons that we've all learned, quite frankly. But this is not the oversight body for Austin Public Health.
I completely agree. I completely agree. That, you know, there are functions of the Austin City Council, and there are statutory functions of Central Health. And we certainly can have an agenda item and invite the appropriate people in the spirit of true collaboration and working together. So with that, we're going to move on to the next agenda item before I get another signal from from our counsel, David Duncan. All right, thank you. So members, there are some changes to the order of the regular agenda this evening. Items 9 and 8 will be taken up first, followed by items 1 and 2 taken up together. Also, we will not take up items 3 or 7 this evening. Those items are 3, discuss and to take appropriate action on the Community Care Collaborative proposed fiscal year FY 2021 budget, and item 7, receive a report on a Central Health employee affirmative action study. So with that, members, we will move to item number 9 on the regular agenda, discuss and take appropriate action on the 1115 Medicaid waiver delivery system reform incentive, open desert, closed projects, the Community Care Collaborative, and other healthcare delivery partners, programs, projects, and arrangements, including agreements with Ascension, Texas. Monica Crowley, Jeff Knodel, and David Hilgers will present this item. Are we moving directly into closed session, David? Yes. So I announce that the board is convening in closed session to discuss agenda item 9 under Texas Government Code Section 551.071, consultation with attorney. Is there anything else I need to announce at this time, David?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so members.
Manager Greenberg, could you ask Ms. Giannis to send me that link for the closed session, because I have the one for executive. I don't see one for board.
Certainly. Brianna, could you resend that to everyone, please? Because everyone must get off of this meeting and get on the link for the closed session for this Board of Managers meeting. Thank you, Manager Jones. All right. That was fun. Okay. Members, sorry for the technical difficulties. It looks like Mr. Geeslin was also having trouble with Ring Central. Sorry about that. So we have concluded our closed session on agenda item number 9. There is no action necessary. It is 7:29. We are back in our open session. We're taking up agenda item number 8, receive a final progress update on priorities detailed in the fiscal year 2020 budget resolution aligned with the strategic goals and objectives. Mike Geeslin will be presenting.
Yes, managers, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. And so what you have is a memo before you that covers some of the milestones that we've been able to achieve this year with respect to what our strategic objectives are. And I think it's fairly self-evident, but the reason that we're providing this is because we need to be able to provide, as we start to near the end of the fiscal year, some type of check-in to say this is where we are. Now, there is a larger final reconciliation, if you will, that comes in after the close of the fiscal year, and we start to put together the annual report along with starting the audit, and then the final, if you will, usually comes out around about the time that we issue the annual report. In fact, it's the content of the annual report. So you'll see this again, but I think it's fairly straightforward, self-evident, but we have myself and other staff members on hand to answer any questions.
Members, any questions at this point? Okay, if not, we will move on to agenda item number 1. Okay, agenda item number 1 is next. There was no motion necessary on agenda item number 8. Agenda item number 1 is receive and discuss a presentation on the proposed Central Health and Community Care Collaboration fiscal year 2021 budgets, including fiscal year 2020 and end-of-year estimates on ongoing budget strategies. Jeff Knodel and Lisa Owens will be presenting.
Madam Chair, I believe. Yes, thank you.
And number 2, discuss and take appropriate action on the Central Health proposed fiscal year 2021 budget, which again will be Jeff Knodel and Lisa Owens presenting.
Thank you, Chair Greenberg. Jeff Knodel, CFO. Lisa Owens is also a co-presenter. We're both suffering some from allergies. I think she's suffering a lot more than I am voice-wise. So I may take over most of the presentation, and we'll try to let her save her voice. This is a proposal for the Central Health fiscal year 2021 proposed budget. We are not presenting the Community Care Collaborative fiscal year 21 budget this evening. As it relates to the fiscal year 2021 proposed budget, we've had a number of meetings. Tonight, we do have a few changes that we want to walk through with you on the proposed budget. And then we will also have a corresponding item where we will ask you to adopt the proposed tax rate. And that'll be later in the meeting. So next slide, please. Oh, hang on, I've got to move my. So for fiscal year 2021, our proposed tax rate, our total tax rate is 11.0306 cents per $100 valuation. You see the breakout between the what's called M&O, the maintenance and operations, and then a small amount related to our debt service amount. For fiscal year 21, our proposed tax rate has a impact of $24.97 to the average homestead value in Travis County, which in this calculation is $355,000. The actions that we're taking tonight are to adopt our budget and our tax rate. If you recollect, and we have the homestead exemptions listed here, that action, the Travis County Commissioners Court took action on those exemptions earlier in this year. Next slide. So here is our fiscal year 20 approved budget and our fiscal year 2021 proposed budget that we presented at the last meeting. And then our fiscal year 2021 proposed budget as of tonight on the far right-hand column. total sources haven't changed. You'll see total revenue of $251.5 million, and then our contingency reserve carry forward of $115.8 million for total sources of $367.3 million. We do have one change on Schedule A, and let me walk through that real quick. It's a change between our healthcare delivery and our administration program. At the executive committee meeting earlier today, the executive committee approved funding for a disparity study, participation in a disparity study through an interlocal agreement. We're pursuing that. So we have increased our administration budget by $450,000 to reflect engagement of the disparity study. And the funding for that came from our contingency reserve, which is in our healthcare delivery budget. So although the aggregate total uses didn't change, we shifted $450,000 from our contingency reserve into our administration budget for the funding of that disparity study in the administration program. So that's, excuse me, that's the one change that shows up on attachment A, which is at a really high level. But let's go into some detail and walk through both that change and another change that we're proposing. So again, it's the same layout for attachment B. The fiscal year 2020 budget is on the left-hand column, as we put it in the middle last week, our budget, and then tonight, our budget for proposed budget as of tonight, what we're proposing. Our other change that we want to discuss is for this proposed budget, we are proposing to not have a budget related to our intergovernmental transfers for disproportionate share. So we would zero that budget out. And that amount is a little bit, as you see in the middle column, a little bit over $29 million. And let me pause there and walk through this a little bit. So in our current agreements with Ascension, Texas, there's a calculation that they receive dollars from both the disproportionate share program and the uncompensated care program. The receipt of those funds or funds they receive as it relates to the value of services. And we've seen significant increases in uncompensated care that has happened both this year and we suspect over the next couple of years will happen. And we feel like at this point, it would be a better use of Central Health funds to instead budget in our capital fund. And Lisa, if you can scroll down a little bit. So we are showing a change of $26.4 million that we will increase as a transfer to our capital reserve fund. And the thinking of that is, again, as a better use of funds that we had planned on debt funding our 3 clinic sites that we were focusing on in our Eastern Travis County, the Eastern Travis Crescent, sorry. And by cash funding or a portion of that or cash funding that instead, the calculations as it relates to using our funds, you know, again, we would issue debt over a 20-year period. We would anticipate at least a $8 million savings over that anticipated life of the debt. And we just feel like for our taxpayers at this point that the use of cash funding makes more sense to preserve some or to have some anticipated interest savings that we would have to increase our tax rate to service that debt. So we have moved $24.6 million of the $29 million from our disproportionate IGT into the transfer to the capital reserve. And so the total of that transfer would be $34.1 million. And then the remaining amount of that will show up in our contingency reserve appropriation. And you see a couple of rows down that's increased from $83.6 million to $87.7 million. And then also in the contingency reserve appropriation, we mentioned in the previous slide the $450,000 related to the participating in the disparity study. You'll see our administration budget increasing under other professional services. So aggregately, we haven't changed our total uses. We have shifted some of our budget in our healthcare delivery program, and then we have increased our administration budget by $450,000. Next slide. So in our budget, and last week we presented our provider detail related to our budget. We do not have any changes related to these amounts. You'll see each service line, and then you'll see the providers related to providing those services, and then an aggregate amount at the budget line level for primary care, specialty care, and other healthcare delivery related budget items. Next slide. So on our capital fiscal year 2021 capital budget, we don't have any changes other than the $24.6 million that we moved. And you'll see that if you can scroll up just a little bit, the aggregate amount that you see coming in as a transfer to capital reserves is $34.1 million. Right. And the next slide, this shows our budget calendar. We've had a number of meetings and public input. We're requesting tonight approval of the fiscal year 2021 budget, and then we'll have a subsequent item to approve our tax rate. And then we're scheduled to appear at the Travis County Commissioners Court on the 29th for both budget approval and tax rate adoption. So that concludes our presentation. We'll be happy to answer any questions that board members may have.
Members, are there questions at this time? Manager Valadez? I think you're on mute, Manager Valadez.
Thank you very much. I'd like to know if this is an appropriate time to ask that we consider increasing the HAM amount under ACA enrollment and outreach.
So let's hear from our staff. Jeff, I think we had asked in our last meeting that you meet with HAM. Is that correct? And did that occur?
Yes. Yes. Staff has met with HAM, and there are probably a couple of different options. So one option would be we amend the budget The other thing that I would point out in this budget is, if you recollect, we had initially the board requested.
Hello?
Cynthia,
Oh, I'm sorry.
can you mute, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so initially we were gonna prepare the budget at 6.5%, and we increased it to 6.9% as it relates to our community health initiatives fund. And so there would be another option. The funding for that in our fiscal year 21 budget is $875,000. That would be another option, would be to potentially take up an item to provide funding per any, I'm just going to call it third-party request. That would be another option. And I realize that there may be some time constraints related around open enrollment, which I believe begins November 1st. So our fiscal year begins October 1. And if that were an avenue that the board elected to pursue, I guess staff would want to do a lot of pre-work on that, and we would have to move quickly in order to accommodate any timelines related to open enrollment.
Okay, Manager Valdez, did you have another question on this? And I think other members may want to comment on this too, this item. Yes, Manager Valdez.
Let me wait until they offer their suggestions and comments on the budget.
On this,
I'm going to come back to this.
okay. Manager Bell, did you have anything on this item, on the ham?
I have a question for staff, mainly, and that is, was there any negotiation with the ham? I mean, we heard that their ask was about $600,000, I think. And if we were to fund it out of the Community Healthcare Initiative Fund, that would be, it would all be gone. So my question is, was there any negotiation with them with regard to the fact that, you know, we might not be able to fund the entire request, but we could look at, we know that because of COVID, there are more individuals out there that are in need of healthcare. And could we in some way increase the amount that we put on there, maybe not to their total request, but to something that can provide them some relief during these difficult times, and then, you know, consider the next time that we do our budget to come in with a request sort of outlining what their needs are and how they would actually utilize our funding besides just the premium assistance. I mean, that's easy. We pay the premium and the person gets it. But I also believe that we have a lot of issues and priorities that we need to look at, of which ham is one. And I think that we definitely need to look at that. But I do feel that $600,000 request that hasn't been worked through or negotiated as we have negotiated with our other contractors would be a little bit out of sorts. Mike, you might want to respond to that.
Mike,
yes.
do you have anything to add?
And as an important reference point, since Jeff had taken the lead on the communications with the organization, with ham, Jeff, one question I have is it fair to say that we're really talking about two things here? One is the outreach piece, and then the other is the funding of the premium assistance.
That's correct. The premium assistance was $641,000.
That's their request. That's their request.
For premium assistance. It was for about 470 additional members that would participate in the premium assistance program. And then there was an additional outreach that Mr. Geeslin
Right. Okay.
outreach and navigation.
Mike?
Manager Bell, to answer your question, I'm gonna talk about both pieces of that. And first, let me overlay this with, this is a motion to amend this budget. You can certainly do that. And to your point, not Rini and Ham, and I certainly appreciate, especially in light of still responding to COVID. Is this the right thing to do? Context is the right thing to do at this point. And likely qualify for MAP and that are high risk and moving. And so I think and know that there's with respect and being bold. Agency. I mean, once we take this budget process and single out a particular organization and say, we're now going to grant you this money. And even though there's metrics attached to it, you're right, there's not really been any, and I'll defer to Jeff on this, but I don't know if it's been the type of negotiation that we would do if we were going through a procurement process and putting out for bid and asking people to come in and say, okay, give us your best proposal, and then being able to narrow down to a preferred firm that we or a group that we negotiate with, and then settling in on a price. And so we haven't had the benefit, and just because of the environment that we're in of doing that. Not to say that Ham couldn't do a great job, I'm sure they could, but it seems like we're stepping over a bunch of processes here. And so for that reason, I don't recommend the outreach side of this, because there is plenty of outreach that we need to be doing during the COVID pandemic as we get through this curve and then potentially get into a vaccination situation, or maybe without a vaccination, what does the next curve look like? So and that's just one example, but also doing just general outreach, for the MAP population. So there's a lot of different things, to your point, that I think rise to the surface on this. So again, I know that's a long answer, but I feel like it was important to break up the request into the two buckets.
And
Jeff, did you have anything to add?
Yes, if I could add something. So yes, we would have to negotiate any of those items. We just didn't have enough time to sit down and discuss specifics. But what I will say, to Ham's credit, is they seem very amenable to the conversation and very amenable to listening to some of our concerns.
Other members who have, I'm scanning.
I'm raising my hand, but I can't see you.
Okay, Manager Jones, yes, please speak out, because it's hard to see people like this. Yes, Manager Jones.
I agree with what Mr. Geeslin said a while ago, specifically with their outreach. Given the question we've been asking about the enhancing services in the Eastern Crescent, particularly at Hornsby Bend, as well as other locations, is some of those dollars we're talking about, or which for outreach in terms of awareness, are you envisioning using those dollars to help us do that in terms of enrollment, increasing capacity at that and other facilities, Mr. Geeslin?
I'm sorry, I was having a hard time following the question, Manager Jones. Could you re-ask the question, please?
Yeah, I thought I understood you said that you had some concerns about the outreach dollars for the HAM, but given the need in other parts,
yes,
around COVID. And my question was, in terms of not only COVID, but also service delivery in the Eastern Crescent, particularly that at Hornsby Bend, do you envision using some of those dollars more focused on trying to enhance services there, increase capacity there, versus using those for the HAM initiative?
I think that, first of all, if you look at the budget as proposed, and there's a bunch of worksheets that back up, what you see before you, but I would say with all of our available outreach dollars, we're going to be focused on not only COVID, but with respect to increasing capacity, as you will, in the areas where we have temporary services and are trying to build long-term services, as well as trying to improve the overall awareness and outreach around the medical access program and the medical access basic program. Now, I think what Mr. Knodel is saying, that if the board wants to go forward on this, we would have to go into the amount set aside there for that community fund and pull those and put those somewhere else, if I understand correctly.
Well,
No.
Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong.
Actually, let me clarify, at least from my perspective, the request, whether it's the 640,000 or the 640 plus the 150,000, that would come from contingency reserve. So we would not
Okay. All right.
make additional.
I misunderstood.
Yeah.
Well, I thought you said that another way, that there are two ways if the board wanted to do any of this, and let's set aside the 150 for now. Okay. Let's divide the question. Okay. So let's take first the 600 and what was it?
641,000.
That if the board wanted maybe zero or some portion of that, that I heard you describe two different mechanisms. One is to amend the budget in that item and take from contingency reserve. The other would be to go back and have staff have a discussion with them and use the money that's set aside in that community fund or some portion of that. Was that what you were saying? It was a different mechanism?
Yes, that's correct. That is correct. So I was referring to the contingency reserve. If we were to make a change tonight, that's where I was anticipating the funding to come from.
But you're saying if we weren't to make a change tonight, but members wanted staff to look at, let's say, I don't know, some portion of that 600 odd, then another way would be to look at the community fund, but you'd have to come back in October because open enrollment starts November 1. Is that correct?
Right. So you would direct staff to immediately begin work to help craft a proposal. And then Ham would, I'm assuming, of course, we haven't made up all the rules, but I'm assuming Ham would make a proposal as it relates to utilizing some of the funding in our Community Health Initiatives Fund.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
yes.
I didn't get the answer to my question. Do I understand the HAM piece? And I hear us talking about HAM piece, but my question specifically right about enhancing, increasing outreach in the Eastern Crescent.
Oh, I thought Mr. Geeslin had answered that. Mr. Geeslin? Yes.
Well, I'd explained, with the funds that we are targeting for use in outreach and communications, the short answer is yes to all the above that you mentioned. Now, if what you want to do is instead of taking 150,000 out of contingency reserves or this community fund amount and putting it towards something else, if you want to take those funds and then direct staff to redistribute them throughout the regular communications and outreach, then obviously, we'll make sure that we've got a responsible way to spend those funds. But given that we're in a pandemic and we've got expansive plans for Eastern Travis County, that won't be difficult to do.
Well,
but you would need to move those funds, Manager Jones, either way.
Okay, my only goal is to enhance what we're doing out there at particularly Hornsby Bend. And you know why? We're not maximizing our utilization because of COVID, and now we're trying to build back up. We need to more of an enhanced outreach effort. And so if we need to take some of those dollars to do that, I would be supportive of that effort.
Right. I think, and I know Ted and others are on the call, but the budget that you see before you today contemplates all of those things, even if we weren't having this discussion right now. But,
Okay,
So,
but
so
again,
let me see if I can clarify this. Are you saying, Mr. Geeslin, that the budget we have before us already has built into the budget outreach at Hornsby Bend and these other areas, setting aside this
yes,
issue? Is that okay?
yes.
I see Ted
Enhance.
Burton is here. Ted, can you,
Now,
Manager Greenberg, enhance. You said anticipate. I'm talking about enhance. I'm not just talking about continuing what we're doing.
I'm not sure. Maybe Ted Burton can help us here.
I mean, if what we're talking about, let's just say we get 3 months into the fiscal year and we decide, and I'm going to put the team on the spot here, but let's just decide, you know, a lot of the door-to-door that we're trying to do, influential calling, if you will, it's just not turning the numbers. We need to buy more expensive media, maybe go a more expensive route. What would we do?
And this is Ted Burton. I'll just say that we have the flexibility in our current budget to do this exact thing. For example, we are launching a marketing effort around the Hornsby Bend Clinic, and we talked about this at the Eastern Travis County Subcommittee meeting, but that includes street teams, hanging door flyers, it includes signage, it includes paid media, social media, our business outreach teams delivering materials to businesses in the region. And that's additional funding that we pulled from other places for this exact effort. So we have some flexibility in our current communications and outreach budget.
Okay, I'll just end my comments here then. We're planning to open a facility in that area and hopefully the latter part of 2021, early 2022. We have a facility currently that is operating at minimum capacity. We have not been able to maximize that. So the argument's going to be making, if we're going to open a facility in 2021 and we don't have capacity now, why do we need it? So we need an aggressive, enhanced outreach effort. And I keep saying it. I understand you're saying you're developing it, but we need to make sure we have more than what we're currently doing to enhance that.
I understand. Thank you, Manager Jones. I think Manager Musaitov has had her hand up for a while, so let me turn there. Manager Musaitov.
Thank you, Chairperson. Well, first of all, I want to commend you all on this budget and the communication team. You've done an incredible job with the outreach, especially now with reaching out to hard-to-reach communities with your with employing community health workers. So I think it's the best way that we can reach these community members. Now, what I'm recommending, definitely support what Manager both Valdez for HAM is that, and giving what Jeff just mentioned, that we have flexibility, and what Dr. Bell mentioned in terms of, I want us to have a streamlined processes, and also that we have flexibility in the budget, that we ask the staff to craft a proposal and to go into negotiations with HAM for the $640K. That is really my recommendation for that piece.
Okay, so when you say for the 640, are you saying staff to have further discussions with HAM and arrive at a number that may or may not be that number, and to look at that community initiatives fund? Is that what you're recommending?
Yes, and definitely these are unprecedented times, and we want to add more people into care. For us, definitely I support more people, but I don't think right now, given that our staff didn't look into the proposal, I just want them to have do their due diligence, and especially that we have the flexibility in our budget to secure to add more additional people to add additional people to MAP, and that we can pay off their premium assistance. So that is my proposal. I can, if you want me to put it into a motion.
Let's see if there's discussion from other members on this item. Members, Manager Valadez.
The reason I was bringing this up specifically is because they are enrolling. This is under ACA, November 1st. They would be expanding to enroll people in either the CHAP program or the MAP program, one of the two. Now, as far as enrolling into a hard-to-reach population, we know that in all these years that we have funded HAM, they have not reached into the population of musicians that are people of color. They have not. And to my knowledge, no one has, because I have gone and met with some of the minority musicians groups that have never even signed up for insurance. Okay,
so given that,
it's a niche, and that was the reason that I was specifically going to support and make a motion that we support both requests, because they know where the musicians are. We do not. And some of them may be all over Travis County, they may be not. But so depending on where their need is for musicians, and people of color have been excluded from that little niche, I think that this is something we need to expand on, because it's already the population that we are going to be serving and need to serve. They're uninsured. They don't have insurance anywhere else.
Understood. So let me ask a question of Jeff, because it's something that Mike brought up. Mm-hmm.
My motion, and unless Manager Mustaikif would add the 150,000, my motion would have been to move that we include the $640,000 or have staff work with them to work on expanding the number for CHAP and MAP, and we know they're going to be one of the two. And second, the niche enrollment specifically to musicians of color that may be all over Travis County, or they may not be. And when we talk about the Eastern Crescent, we also need to take into consideration, MAP told us, Community Care told us, we have so many people that are eligible for MAP and they're not getting on the program.
Okay, so I have a question of staff. Thank you, Manager Valdez.
That's my motion. Unless Maram would accept an addendum.
I don't think we're ready for a motion yet. There was something that Manager Bell, I think, had brought up, and then Mr. Geeslin responded to, that I want to ask of Jeff Knodel, and that is, how does this differ from our standard operating processes? For instance, if we were going to do outreach, would there have been an RFP, a contract? That was a question that I heard, and then I heard Mr. Geeslin. So Jeff, can you respond to that?
Yes, typically if we were going to go out in a normal procurement, central health procured service, we would typically do some sort of competitive process.
We don't have time.
And I understand we have the November 1st deadline for enrollment. I understand the need and COVID. We have certain laws, regulations, processes, statutes, procedures, and Manager Oliver, yes. You're on mute, Manager Oliver. We can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Manager Oliver.
Oh.
Now, yes.
There you are.
Nope, we lost you again. You're muted.
Something's wrong. I got a little error message, not even a mute.
You're good now.
Okay, good. I'm in favor of doing the $641,000 expansion. I think where I'm a little apprehensive with the 150, and I do think there absolutely needs to be outreach to musicians of color who have been excluded. I really do. I worry about how we get those metrics, how we ensure that $150,000 is actually utilized for that specifically. How do we have, and I feel like we might do a better, better job overall of using that money to do outreach and perhaps even funneling some people over to HAM. I don't know. I'm just trying to propose something, but it makes me nervous to hand over $150,000 without knowing exactly how that would be spent and if there would be any accountability on that. Or would it be like one, radio buy and then it's gone, it's.
Thank you, Manager Oliver. Other comments from managers? Yes, Manager Jones.
I just have, maybe I'll ask this a simple way. And Ted, maybe you can answer this. We're talking about $150,000 for outreach to HAM. How much enhanced are you talking about in outreach in the Eastern Crescent? Not how much you currently have, how much you're talking about enhancing that.
I would like to get back to you on that, Manager Jones. I don't want to just give you something on the fly.
Okay.
I don't feel like that would be accurate.
But we're about to vote on the budget tonight. My concern is that we'll be in a situation where HAM may have received it and other opportunities are not made available.
So let me make a recommendation. Mr. Geeslin, yes.
Yes, Chair Greenberg, thank you. Manager Jones, in answer to your question, I know Ted's team is actually, and I misspoke, it's not developing, it's deploying. I know that they're pushing resources out to Hornsby Bend, for example. Ted, within a week or 2 weeks?
No, it's happening now. So we have street teams that are starting next week. We have direct mail that's underway. I've just approved the media plan, so the digital will begin next week. So it's all happening, and our business outreach is continuing and has been ongoing since July.
But you cannot give me
the other thing, Manager
give me a
Jones,
numerical value is what you're telling me.
I can.
Yeah, but I'm actually trying to get to that. So just to put it into perspective, to give some type of comparative basis, Ted, what's the amount that we have spent on or will have spent by the end of it on the media buy blitz for the second curve?
Actually, it's this next curve, and we had budgeted not to exceed 150,000, and I think the media buy curve is 115.
Okay, so just to put that into comparison, Manager Jones, we've set aside 150,000 for a media buy and to really amp up our media for the next curve, and that's both in very culturally appropriate media across the demographic that we serve. And what Ted has indicated is that we've got 115,000 of that placed. But in a media market like Austin, you can find ways to invest that to have an impact. So if that just gives you some kind of frame of reference about if we had those funds to use it for different media, what we would do.
Thank you, Mr. Geeslin. I'm going to make a recommendation here. And my recommendation is that we split completely these, because there's two different funding items, okay? Let's split them. One is is it 640,000, that amount, right, Jeff?
Yes, ma'am. That's
okay.
Correct.
So there's 640,000 that's for premium assistance. Let's take that, let's split that and look at that completely separately from what I'm hearing from members, from the 150,000 for outreach. And so the question I pose to members is there something that you all want to see happen on the 640,000? If so, is it the full 640,000 or not? And would it be an amendment to this budget, or do you want Jeff, for instance, Jeff and the staff to go back and work with them on some amount from the community fund? Manager Musaitev.
Chair, I have a motion, if I may. I move staff to meet with HAM and to negotiate a contract and expanding MAP enrollment for uninsured musicians, and especially to musicians of color who are disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, and to execute a contract no later than October 1st.
Okay, could I ask a question? A contract, Jeff, can you comment on this language?
So today is September 16th.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds pretty aggressive as far as executing a contract.
Mm-hmm.
I think on the $640,000, that's probably more transactional. So the amount came from the number of members they had to turn away from last year. So they have a specific count and have tied that to funding. What I don't know would be what they might be able to do as it relates in this short period of time for the recruitment of musicians of color in this short period of time. I don't know how long it takes to stand up some sort of campaign. Ted would probably know a lot.
Let me ask a procedural question. David, do we need actually a second to be discussing this right now?
It would be wise, yes.
Okay, Manager Valadez?
Sure.
Yes. I think procedurally, Robert's rules, we need a second to just discuss.
Manager Valdez just seconded.
Okay, Manager Valdez seconded. Okay. Mike, did you want to say something now? Yes.
Yes. Let me just say this on, with the insight on everything that we've got going on, the ability to negotiate this, and Jeff's a trooper, but there's other people that are going to have to be pulled on this, and something we'll have to reshuffle. And why don't we do this? Instead of sitting down and negotiating a contract, again, I have a lot of respect for Ham and Rini and everything they're doing. And please don't take this personally, but if we can tack on what we're doing around the ACA enrollment and try to accomplish the same end, which is reaching out to individuals in communities of color that have been disenfranchised, and maybe that the advertising that is used, or the marketing or the media or the information campaigns that are used for this, just haven't been connecting with. And so I think we need to try to bake this into our normal processes, but to set up a whole new negotiation session in this short period of time with everything else that we've got going on related to the pandemic and serving communities of color, it's just, we're tapped out.
Manager
I'm just gonna
Masaitis?
put it bluntly like that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Geeslin. We need to hear from you. Yes, Manager Masaitis.
Well, thank you. Then if that's the case, if it's difficult to negotiate a contract, then I'll amend my motion to provide them with the $640K what they asked for, if that's easier for you and the staff. The reason why I propose this motion is to give staff the flexibility to negotiate that. If I amend it to provide them with the $640K that they asked for to enroll 400 additional members.
Mr. Geeslin?
Well, yes, I'd like Jeff to, correct me and if I'm missing this, but if it's the 641,000 is transactional, and it's just a matter of the reimbursements as part of the enrollment, is there a contract to be had, or are there other lesser onerous forms of documentation?
No, it's.
And I'd also ask this of Stephanie McDonald too, because she's involved with similar efforts.
Yeah, it's thank you, Mike. It's premium assistant dollars that we pay directly to Sendero. So Kit's team manages who's enrolled, and we manage whatever our budget is, but the actual transaction is between Central Health and Sendero.
Okay.
Stephanie, do you
Greenberg, I know we're doing this on the fly, but ask Stephanie or Ted if there's anything to add to
that.
No, I just wanted to clarify that the money was going to go to Sendero for the premiums.
So what we're talking about here is it would be an amendment to the Central Health budget for $640,000 additional dollars to go to Sendero. And
to the premium assistance program.
The premium assistance
line.
Right, to the premium. Yeah. Explain to me how that money would be used, because the goal here, from what I've heard, is that money would specifically be used for additional people who Ham would be able to enroll, who are Ham, who they hadn't previously. Is there the ability to target it in that way?
Yes, and I think the best thing to do is for Jeff or Lisa, whoever was sharing the screen last, to actually take us to the budget line and show the board where those funds will go for the premium.
My question is not, I understand that the additional money could go in that line item budget to Sendero for additional premium assistance. That's not my question.
Right.
My question is, how does that money then get specifically used by Sendero to enroll additional people who are Ham?
So we do the outreach. The CHAP program is administered by Kit Abney-Spells and her team. They work with foundation communities, and Ham and Sims works with foundation communities to get members that are eligible, because remember, these people have to be eligible for the premium tax credits to the ACA. They have to be under 200% of the federal poverty limit level and Travis County residents. They do the outreach. So
Who's that?
Ham and Sims. There's no contractual agreement per se with Ham and Sims directly as Central Health. And so they do that outreach, they get their members to enroll who are eligible. And this would allow more people who are eligible. So last year there was a line of people, many of them were eligible, but we ran out of funds before they could enroll. This would just get more people who were eligible and enrolled in the Premium Assistance Program.
Okay.
And then specifically on the transfer, and I'll ask this of Lisa, is this an intercompany transfer between Central Health and Sendero once those policies effectuate?
Mike, I don't know if Lisa can talk, but I'll say yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Don't make Lisa talk.
Yeah, Jeff, why don't you take that one?
Yeah. Yes, the answer to that is yes. It's just an intercompany.
So after everything that Stephanie just said, Chair Greenberg, thank you for letting me reference that, then there would be an intercompany transfer to reconcile.
Manager Valadez, I see your hand up.
Yes, if I'm not mistaken, what I thought I heard Stephanie say is that Ham and Sims are the ones that would have to do the outreach and enrollment, correct? So if they don't have the money to do the additional outreach and enrollment, and we don't have anything in place that's going to designate that we have a metrics that's going to show that it's going to go to potential musicians of color that have largely been excluded from their drives historically, as the records, as the data will show, because that's data based, then I think we're hamstringing them, not to be tenacious, we're hamstringing them because they need some money for outreach. Okay. Now, I especially if, like Stephanie said, she's affirming that they have to do the outreach. And maybe somebody just needs to tell Rini, Rini, you need to make sure that some of that money goes to outreach by people who are culturally competent to be able to reach those musicians of color. I don't know what she has as far as a team, and I don't think it's much, because I know she's got a marketing budget, but I don't know she has an outreach and
Stephanie, can you respond to
at all? Okay, at all. That was the purpose for the 100.
Okay, let's let Stephanie respond.
And I'm sorry, I know John Morgan is also on the call, and he may be also able to weigh in.
John, can you?
It is my understanding that no money ever goes directly from Central Health to Ham and Sims. And so they do that outreach on their own as an organization. Jeff, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say that is correct. And where I think you're going, if they did the outreach and we were going to fund it, then we would have a contractual relationship to pay
exactly.
dollars.
Yes.
Exactly. And that would have to be a new contract.
Right. And so that gets to one of my questions some time ago that I had to Jeff, and when I talked about laws and policies and procedures, and that would, I assume, have to go through some type of contracting and procurement process. Am I correct?
Yes, it would.
Okay. So that's why I said we need to separate these. I'm still, and pardon my confusion, but the 640,000, yes, I understand that goes to Sendero. What I don't understand is how can we be sure or ensure that Ham and Sims would use that for what we have in mind. I don't know how else to put it. Stephanie?
I don't know that I can address that in any kind of formal documented way. And I think that is a question for this board, and maybe it is just direction that is given by this body to us to make sure that, we communicate that to Ham and Sims. But I don't think.
So it would be a direction from the board. John Morgan, did you have anything to add here?
No, nothing covered. I think it's been accurately described that the funding for premium assistance is directly with Sendero, and an effort for outreach would be a separate procurement and would be it would generate a contract through a competitive process.
Right. Okay. Yes, Manager Valadez. We have a motion and a second before us also,
That's
members.
right, but she amended the motion and I haven't seconded the amended motion.
What was the amendment to the motion? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
She originally had included that there was going to be an expedited contract, or that it would be.
Can you read the original motion, please, Manager Musaitis?
And her amendment.
Yes. The original motion was I move staff to meet with HAM and to negotiate a contract and expanding MAP enrollment for uninsured musicians and especially to musicians of color who are disproportionately impacted by COVID-19 and to execute a contract no later than October 1st.
Did you have an amount associated with that?
So based on what was just said, negotiating a contract is not feasible at this time. My amendment is to move the 640 to Sendera funds and to fund additional.
Is it better to do an amendment or just to withdraw your motion and start over? David Duncan?
I think I'll withdraw.
Yes, I think that would be cleaner.
I think that's wise.
I think that would be cleaner. Okay.
So I withdraw my motion, and the new motion that I have in place is that we move 640K to Sendero's budget for premium assistance for HAM and SIMS to expand MAP enrollment for uninsured musicians and especially to musicians of color who are disproportionately impacted by COVID-19.
Is there any direction that goes along with that to staff or to HAM and SIMS or to anyone else?
Well, the clear direction is the money is for this population.
Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. Manager Valadez, I see your hand up.
Yeah, yes, I remember in listening to some of the comments that Renee Collins made, she said that they would develop a matrix because we need to have assurance.
Okay, we had a motion. Is there a second to that motion, members? Let's stay within Robert's Rules of Order.
To that motion.
Is there a second to Manager Musaitis' motion?
Can it include metrics being?
Is there a motion? We cannot discuss it without a second. Is there a second?
Sure, I second it.
Okay, so thank you, Manager Zamora. He has seconded Manager Musaitis' motion. Now it can be discussed. Yes, Manager Valadez.
Now I'm going to ask the question of whether or not we can develop or at least get to the development of a matrix that will show that after this 45-day, because it's only 45 days for the enrollment period, begins January 1st, that they would be able to show us demographically, because we'll know that Sendera has paid the money for the premiums, that there has been a significant increase in enrollment in the musicians of color. That's what I wanted to make sure that we include somewhere.
So would that be an amendment to the motion?
I'm asking if Maram would accept something like that, language to that effect, so that we know that it's in writing, it's in black and white, and this is something that they have to do.
Manager Musaitis, do you accept that as an amendment? Okay. So there's been an amendment. It's been accepted by the author of the motion.
So can I just weigh in on something for a second?
Yes.
We have 3 motions, maybe more, for the budget.
Yes.
One way that if we decide we want to incorporate what Manager Musaitis has put on the floor and Cynthia has seconded, is to use that last motion on the total budget and say as presented and revised during our discussion.
Right.
So you have all of these separate motions.
So roll it in. Yes, I agree. Instead of having a separate amendment like on the floor, roll it in. Okay, but, and so Holly, if you could come back, please, a moment. Holly, are you still there?
Still here.
Okay, so if we were going to accomplish it in that way, how would that transpire as procedurally with Robert's Rules of Order?
So you do have a motion and a second.
Yes.
Continue to discuss until you reach what you feel is a good place with this particular funding. Once you get to that point, you can withdraw the motion and make the motions that we put in front of you in the motion sheet with the revision I just discussed.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, what would happen is this motion as amended would be withdrawn. And when we get to making the motion on the budget, there would be a motion made to approve the budget with this particular revision. Is that what you're saying, Holly?
Yes, ma'am. So if you look at your motion sheets, on the very last motion associated with the budget, it says something like, I move that the board approve the fiscal year 21 budget as presented by staff, and you would and revise during our discussion to include such and such funding for HAM, if that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were saying. Well, we could do that, or we could have an up or down on this. I mean, they're two different, because if you do that, then it's rolled in and you have to approve or not the entire budget. So if members, and I don't know that members would want to do that. The other procedural way is to go ahead as we are doing and have an up and down on this. They are different procedurally. David, am I correct?
I think that's correct. You
Am
could,
I correct,
you could have,
Holly?
Well, you could do that, but then when we get to the budget for the overall budget, we're going to have to exclude HAM.
Right.
Oh.
Taking a separate vote on HAM.
or you could just say, as amended in our prior vote. I mean, you could add that to that last motion and say the budget that Jeff has drafted with the change as directed by the board.
Could we do that?
Do you think that would work, Holly?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So we could do it with the change as directed in the prior board motion. Okay. So is there any other discussion? If not, we could go ahead, it sounds like, with that. We have a motion. We have a motion in front of us. There was by Manager Musaitis. There was a second by Manager Valdez. I'll get to you, Manager Jones. It was amended by Manager Valdez, and the amendment was accepted by Manager Musaitis. Manager Jones.
That's a question to Manager Valdez. Question of accountability. How will this be reflected to us to know that indeed they reported and what the numbers are?
Well, having enrolled people before in ACA, when the premium is paid and the feds send back the list that they have gotten them on the rolls because they've gotten their premiums, then you know exactly they're not enrolled until the premium is received by the feds and the insurance company gets back their names on a list. Okay, that's what
Mr. Geeslin, do you have something to add to this?
Yes, I'm sorry. I can, Manager Valdez, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, okay, Manager Valdez, were you finished? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's basically it. It's
relatively simple. Yeah.
It's relatively simple.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Geeslin.
The challenge, and Manager Jones, that's an excellent question, but it's going to be difficult to be able to do that. We're going to have to, and that's why I'm saying between now and October 1, to be able to hammer out a contract.
We're not talking about a contract at this point.
I understand that. I understand that, Chair Greenberg. But the answer, this is informative to Manager Jones' question. But right now, the money changes between Central Health and Sendero. The person or the entity that doesn't perform would be HAM.
Right.
But no money is changing hands between Central Health and HAM. And so therefore, your greatest contractual leverage doesn't exist because you can't withhold payment. And the nice folks at HAM, I don't want to negotiate a contract with them where they've got liquidated damages. I mean, that just comes right out of their operating fund. And that's, they're a community organization. That's not the kind of deal that you would want to cut with them. And so I at the top of my head, as I stand here today, I mean, this is the thing you bring the staff together for and figure out, okay, creatively, what can we do to ensure that we're enrolling musicians of color, and how do we augment that with our own outreach efforts? And so that's the $64,000 question.
That's an excellent question, and it's one that I was trying to get at some time ago. But let me ask a related question. Since we already have a program with HAM, right? with enrollment, and the money, and there's money that's going to Sendero, currently has been for that enrollment. How do we have accountability last year?
We don't
They have
currently have a contract with HAM right now. We're not paying them any money.
Right, I understand that, and we're not talking about it here either. The money would go to Sendero, but right now, if I'm understanding this correctly, money goes to Sendero in this last year's budget, and there was money that then that went through Sendero for enrollment of HAM folks. Is that correct?
If I may, the money,
Yes.
There is an outreach and enrollment contract with foundation communities, and the HAM and SIM members have to demonstrate they are members of HAM and SIMs to foundation communities during open enrollment.
Okay, so that is the current accountability mechanism.
That's your enforcement piece.
That's the current enforcement piece. That's what I was asking. Thank you, Stephanie. Manager Valadez.
Yes, I don't know what kind of outreach into the niche musician, people of color, program outreach that they would be doing, because they rely on volunteers to sit in their offices and people to walk in because they have to fill out their income tax. And one of the questions on the income tax is, have you enrolled in, do you have insurance? Have you enrolled in an insurance program? That's required. So that's how they get the ACA. Okay, get to that part. It's fixed. There's relatively zero outreach. That was one of the reasons that we would be able to tie him to for telling us, you know, we're not going to give you some money just to go out and enroll more musicians that were in line and didn't get funded, okay, by Sendero, or didn't get premiums paid by Sendero. We're going to enroll you because you're going to be a musician of color. That's why I was wanting to at least, you know, if nothing else, give them something for enrollment, okay?
But we would have to go through a procurement process on that, is what I have heard from staff. We would have to go through a procurement process. Enrollment starts November 1. And staff has said that we would have to go through a procurement process. That's why we have separated that. And this is September 16th still, I believe, okay?
So my question to Central Health is, as we have our enrollment dollars developed in our budget, okay, it says enrollment, education and enrollment, can we add an amount there and just and put HAM on the line for this is what you're going to do? That's my question. I've sat in budget meetings that we have had over these last few years, and I have seen people offer, oh, well, let's do $1 million for this. Or let's do
so I'm going to take us back to the item in front of us. My understanding has been that previously we can't, I thought that previously we couldn't be that targeted, Stephanie, with the enrollment process.
I don't know if I can answer that question.
Okay.
I think there's a little bit of confusion.
Mike, can you help out?
Yes, and this is where there's certain counsel, and quite frankly need Sendero involved in this as well. But there are certain limitations on the ACA outreach.
That's what I thought.
It's one thing to say, hey, call 211 or call 978, fill in the blank. Let us help you, you know, with your options. And just generally speaking, it tends to stop at that.
That's what I thought.
We're not in a position, and we can talk about Sendero, but we're not in a position to, I think, and staff, you know, correct me on this if I'm generally not, you know, in the right direction. We can't specifically get out there and market and steer towards Sendero.
Right. I didn't think we could.
On this, and I see Manager Valdez has a lot of experience in this, and her role as navigator and conductor and so forth. So there are some limitations. Now, having said that, you know, what we'll do is we'll take the budget that we have for ACA outreach, just as we do every year, and get creative. I mean, Ted's got an amazing shop; they can do just about anything, and so you know, we'll figure out what we can do within the bounds of the law to make it known to musicians of color. Hey, you've got options out there. that you may not have known about before. And it could be just because the typical outreach just, just for whatever didn't appeal to them. I do know this from just the past 3 years and seeing what we do, there is a lot of effort around trying to appeal to communities of color, but not specifically musicians. So maybe there's some things that we can do creatively within the bounds of law, within the budget that you see before you now.
Getting back to Manager Jones' question, and to
can I just follow up on what Mike said?
Yes,
just real quickly.
Yes, quickly, Manager Valdez.
Having looked at almost all of those insurance availabilities when we go through ACA, if I'm not mistaken, Sendero had the best mental health program within the scope of the insurance plan that you would buy into. They had the best one. They offered more value added and more services, just so you know.
Okay, so
we concur and we
Manager Valadez had made an amendment to the motion that Manager Musaitov has, and Manager Musaitov accepted. And that amendment had to do with a matrix to after the enrollment, look at who is enrolled. Manager Jones asked how we do that and have accountability. I'm paraphrasing. Am I correct, Manager Jones?
Yes, how can we document and account for it?
Okay, have we resolved that?
Not really.
Chair Greenberg, all I can offer is that, we can provide a demographic breakdown of the CHAP membership, and we are able to do that. I cannot speak to the accountability piece, but I can speak to after the enrollment period closes and then there's the effectuated membership, we can demonstrate the demographics of that population.
Okay, Manager Jones, Manager Valadez, yes.
Just to follow up on what Stephanie said, in addition, when I have asked for the demographics of those enrolled by HAM, they have provided them. Okay. This year they provided them, so they can keep those numbers too. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Manager Jones, did you have anything else?
I don't think I can feel comfortable supporting that if we cannot actually document and account for it. I'll just be honest. I have problems with that. They've had a history of not doing this, so what would make things change all of a sudden is my concern.
Are there
Jones,
other?
I really don't have a good answer for you on that one. It's something that, to be fully disclosing with the board, you're kind of voting blind on this because there's not a real way, because of the way the transactions work, to hold them accountable if we don't enroll musicians of color.
So let me ask another question of Mike, of you and staff. If instead of making this motion, there were to be a motion for staff to go back and try to work this out with HAM and come back in time for open enrollment and use the funds that are use some amount of the funding that's in the Community Initiatives Fund. Would that work? Would that give the staff time to work some of this out?
So I'll take a shot at that. Yes, it would get, this is Jeff, it would give us time, but we also would have to establish so this is a new fund for us, right?
Right, okay.
So we would also have to establish, the rules or the governance of that fund. I don't think that's been, we
had slated that to occur, I'm sorry to interrupt, we had slated that to occur sometime second or third quarter, by the second or third quarter of the fiscal year, not the first quarter.
Okay, another question. Is there a way to have this amount of funding be contingent on, or some portion of it contingent on, staff taking, and I understand staff is totally overwhelmed, taking the amount of time that reasonably it's going to take to develop some system? Is that a possibility?
Well, so I need to ask a question of the staff team. Would we need to bring foundation communities to the table and be part of this agreement or understanding in order for it to work.
They don't do outreach.
Mike, I don't think so, because the outreach is really occurring with Ham and Sims. They're the ones going to their
Yeah,
members.
I understand that, but I'm trying to look for somebody in the pie here to say, okay, you're getting paid to do something. I've got to find somebody to hold accountable on this. Otherwise, I don't have an effective plan that I can enforce.
Okay, so this is what I'm asking. The motion in front of us, as amended, would add $640,000 to Sendero's budget for this purpose, as outlined in the motion and as amended by Manager Valadez. Okay, is it possible to also put another amendment on there that would add in some kind of making it contingent on working out some system to have accountability for this? That's the question I'm asking.
Well, let me ask the converse of that. If we were not able to come up with something that we felt like was genuinely going to benefit musicians of color, then what's the recourse? Would we simply not fund it? Because then what you're doing is you're telling those individuals that are on MAP, okay, there's not a program here. So basically,
I don't know
put you
that I'm
back to where you
saying,
were, but I've got to have some kind of recourse here.
yeah, I don't know if we're saying not fund it, but that basically a portion of this motion would be a mandate that there will be an accountability measures developed.
Well, if that's the mandate, and so it is a prerequisite, and at the staff level, if we felt like, even just everybody's best efforts, we can't get there. There's no guarantees that this is going to have a desired outcome for musicians of color, then I wouldn't authorize the transfers. And so we wouldn't intentionally start enrolling people, because you don't want to enroll people and then take something away from them.
I understand. No, we can't do that. That's absolutely not something.
I wouldn't be able to move forward because the board would have placed a requirement on me.
Okay, you've answered my question. You've answered my question. Does anybody else have any suggestions? I see.
Yeah, I have a suggestion.
Yes, Jeff.
So if you approve the budget, and it was contingent on Ham coming back to the October board meeting and presenting a plan that the board would approve, and that would signal that funding would be available. I know it's a tight timeline, and
right, but
work for Ham, and they would just have to tell us that. But that would be an option that they could come and present to the board. The board would acknowledge that either we're satisfied with your efforts and we're going to have additional funding, or not, and we'll just.
So if we shift the onus, then Jeff, that's what you're saying.
Yes.
Shift the burden on Ham to come back. Okay.
Yeah.
And then what I would like to do, because we're talking about reaching out to communities of color, is there needs to be some kind of validation of that. I could put together a plan and say, hey, this is going to be good for communities of color, but you may want to say, all right, what third party can come in and validate this?
Right.
So I think we would put that requirement on them as well.
So thank you, Jeff, because it sounds like that would satisfy the, that it was, I don't want to put words in my mouth, but it seems like that was the intent behind Manager Valadez's amendment, and the questions that Manager Jones and some others have raised. But it sounds like it would take an additional amendment to the Musaitif motion. Does somebody have wording for that additional amendment? Jeff, could you?
I would suggest that we approve. I think the way that Holly was recommending, that we approve the budget as presented by staff, in addition to an additional $641,000 for Ham Premium Assistance Program, contingent on Ham coming back to a future board meeting and presenting their plans to the satisfaction of the central.
So So we actually have a motion in front of us. So it sounds like it would be an amendment to Manager Musaitiv's, another amendment to Manager Musaitiv's motion that would say that this is contingent upon Ham returning to the board with a plan for accountability. Is that correct?
Chair?
Yes. Yes, Manager Musaitiv.
Actually, I'm thinking of withdrawing my motion, and Holly sent out a very clean motion that entitled everything. So this is Holly's words. If you
Okay, well, wait. You have to withdraw your motion.
I withdraw my motion.
Okay.
And this actually incorporates everything that even
Okay, so I'm recognizing Manager Musaitiv has withdrawn her motion. I'm now recognizing her to make a new motion.
I move that the board approve the budget items in the Central Health fiscal year 2021 budget and resolution that pertains to People's Community Clinic and Sendero Health Plans Incorporation on the condition that the Sendero line item be increased by $640,000 if Ham presents a proposal to Central Health by next board meeting on how it will reach minority musicians, and such proposal is accepted by Central Health.
So that's the new motion in front of us right now. Is that correct, Manager Musaitiv?
Yes.
I second that.
Okay, and we have a motion by Manager Musaitiv, and we have a second by Manager Zamora. Manager Valdez, quickly, yes?
I know that I don't want to throw anything, a new wrench in the conversation, but isn't it actually Sims that's doing the outreach, Stephanie? No, it's Ham that's doing the outreach and enrollment? Or
Let's let Stephanie answer.
They both are eligible, but most people who are Sims members are Ham members.
Okay, but who is doing the actual
Foundation Communities is doing the actual enrollment. Ham and Sims both reach out to their members. Ham has the larger number, as a greater membership, and most people who are Sims members are also Ham members.
Okay, members, we have a motion and a second. Are we ready to vote? Okay, we have a motion before us and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Any abstaining? No, I didn't see any opposed and no abstaining. Thank you, ma'am.
Can I ask,
yes.
Manager Bell, did you mean to vote on this item?
Oh. Manager Bell is abstaining. Is Manager Bell abstaining? Manager Bell is abstaining.
Yes, I have to abstain the Sendero item.
Yes, he is. Okay. Holly, was there anybody else who needed to abstain?
No.
No. Okay. So yes, we will note Manager Bell abstaining since it is a Sendero item. Thank you. And all others, according to what I saw, voted in favor of this motion. Is that correct? Thank you, members. All right, we will move on. Thank you. Very, very productive discussion. Thank you, members. And thank you, staff. Very, very productive. All right. Where are we now? So we need to move on to some motions, correct, David? Because we're on agenda item number 2, discuss and take appropriate action on the Central Health proposed fiscal year 2021 budget. Unless there's anything else, then we need to move on to our motions.
Correct.
Correct? So
yes.
We have motions in front of us. Do we have someone, Manager Bell? Yes.
I move that the board approve the budget items in the Central Health fiscal year 2021 budget and resolution that pertain to the University of Texas at Austin.
And I would note that I believe there are 3 managers who will abstain to this, given any affiliation whatsoever with the University of Texas at Austin. That would be myself, and I believe Manager Zuniga and Manager Jones. Am I correct? Okay. So all in favor of this motion?
I need a second.
Oh, we need a second. Yes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Manager Musaitiv seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstaining? Aye. 3 abstaining, noted. All right. Can we move now, members, to the next motion? Yes.
I can Yeah, I can. I move that the board approve the budget items in the Central Health Fiscal Year 2021 budget and resolution that pertain to the University of Texas system.
I believe we have one who will be abstaining, Manager Musaitif. Is that correct?
Yes, because of my
Okay,
work.
so all in favor say aye.
I need a second. I need a second.
Oh, we need a second. You're right. Second. Manager Zuniga seconds. Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstaining. Manager Musaitif is abstaining.
Yes.
Okay, next.
I move that the board approve the budget items in the Central Health Fiscal Year 2021 budget and resolution that pertain to integral care and project access.
And Manager Zamora, you will be abstaining. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
I second.
Manager Oliver seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Abstaining. Abstaining. Manager Zamora abstains. Okay, next. I think we have another motion.
I can't, this motion.
Yes, okay.
That motion is done. So I
Yes.
move that the board approve the Central Health Fiscal Year 2021 budget as presented by staff and the accompanying resolution for all items other than the items relating to the University of Texas at Austin, the University of Texas system, integral care, project access, People's Community Clinic, and Sendero Health Plans Incorporated.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a
Madam
second.
Chair,
Yes.
before you vote on that, I believe Mr. Geeslin will read the actual resolution.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Mr. Geeslin.
Yes. Resolution, Travis County Healthcare District doing business as Central Health Board of Managers, resolution adopting the fiscal year 2021 budget. The Travis County Healthcare District, parentheses, the district, doing business as Central Health Board of Managers, parentheses, the board, hereby adopts the Central Health Fiscal Year 2021 budget, which, small Roman numeral 1, consists of the Central Health Fiscal Year 2021 budget sources and uses summary, parentheses, attached as attachment A, and the Central Health Fiscal Year 2021 budget uses detail, attached as attachment B, both of which are incorporated herein by reference as if set out in full. Small Roman numeral 2, directs the president and CEO to advance the following strategic goals and objectives of the district, as previously established, and the related work with periodic reports due to the Board of Managers as follows. Develop and execute healthcare delivery based on people in place. Continue service site expansion in Colony Park, Hornsby Bend, and Del Valley or Southeast Travis County, with commencement of the site development and presentation of project budgets and estimated timelines for the phases of work. Ensure the connection to people in place is supported by a culture of equity, inclusivity, and diversity in both Central Health's workforce and contracts with historically underutilized businesses. Support ongoing COVID-19 response efforts for the benefit of Central Health funded patients, including support of clinical partners, testing operations, contact tracing, vaccination efforts to reduce seasonal flu spread and utilization of critical care resources, outreach and education in high-risk zip codes and communities, and other mitigation efforts. 2, implement patient-focused and coordinated healthcare system. A, develop initial goals, identify care gaps, and identify critical investment targets to improve access to care by building a healthcare system focused on health equity and meeting the healthcare needs of eligible members of the low-income population. B, improve access to specialty care across prioritized service lines. C, implement a new in-house call center to improve and streamline eligibility and enrollment in MAP and MAP basic coverage programs. D, support implementation of Community Care's transition to EPIC, a new electronic health record management system. E, develop plans to continue to appropriately utilize telemedicine, virtual care, and e-consults for primary behavioral and specialty care. F, align and strengthen case management across the district's enterprise, that is, Community Care Collaborative, and Sendero Health Plans. Coordinate communications and outreach with healthcare delivery operations to inform the community, and specifically Central Health funded patients, of available culturally and linguistically competent healthcare services and programs. 3, implement a sustainable financial model for healthcare delivery, including optimizing the former Brackenridge campus, now known as Downtown Campus redevelopment, to fund Central Health's mission. A, establish and implement a hospital care and services funding model that is transparent and structured such that any funding commitments and assumption of risk ensures optimum use of local tax dollars and other public funds. Further, the model should ensure quality, accountability, public benefit, and be based on measurable hospital and specialty services for Central Health's funded patients. This work will require Central Health to adopt additional operational responsibilities and maintain a sufficient level of reserves. B, optimize the downtown campus redevelopment by completing demolition of buildings, obtaining optimum zoning overlays from the Austin City Council, and completing negotiations with the City of Austin regarding the alignment of Red River Street. C, maintain sufficient reserves to ensure that emergency and total reserves as projected in the development and approval of this budget are at levels sufficient to maintain current service levels and permit appropriate enhancements based on planning efforts and scaled appropriately to take into account the risk capacity of Central Health. Reserve levels should not be materially affected by unplanned expenditures or new mid-year programming unless there is a compelling, time-sensitive business case that staff or a board member recommends to the Board of Managers and that the board approves. Reserve will also include resources to improve access to the appropriate levels of primary and specialty care services that improve patient experience and quality of life. And small Roman numeral 3 acknowledges that the Central Health fiscal year 2021 budget will require a myriad of operational activities consistent with Central Health's mission and values to make improvements and maintain operations to ensure that Central Health and its enterprise partners, that is community healthcare centers and Sendero health plans, achieve their stated missions, promote equity, and reduce health disparities in those we are privileged to serve. The board further acknowledges that staff time and resources will be dedicated to process improvements, technology and facility operations, communications and outreach, reporting, planning, strategy development, all facets of healthcare delivery, human resources, governance, compliance, procurement, and sound business and fiscal practices. Pursuant to Chapter 281 of the Texas Health and Safety Code, the Central Health fiscal year 2021 budget sources and uses summary and any amendments thereto must be approved by the Travis County Commissioners Court before the budget becomes effective. Moreover, any expenditures incurred or paid pursuant to this Central Health fiscal year 2021 budget shall be controlled by the Travis County Healthcare District financial policies and any other policies adopted by the board related to reserve levels or the expenditure of funds that explicitly require the Central Health Board of Managers approval. The acquisitions and services funded by Central Health will, to the greatest extent possible, be predicated on the submission of service or business plans that measure viability, sustainability for the intended term, and the value to Central Health's mission. Adopted at an open meeting of the Central Health Board of Managers held on this day, the blank day of September 2020.
All right.
Members, I added the phrase of this day to indicate what would go into the blank once this is no longer draft form.
Right. Okay. So is a vote in order at this time, David Duncan?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So we are ready to vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. I see none in opposition. Any abstaining? I see none abstaining. Thank you so much to members and staff. And the motion carries. Members, we will need each of you to sign the resolution that was provided in the backup materials by Monday, September 21st. So staff will be reaching out to you to find the best way to obtain your signatures. I've already had discussions with them and we're working to see if we can find electronic means and other means. So they'll be reaching out to you. I do want to take this opportunity to thank the public for their input in our budget process. It is very, very meaningful to us that you take the time out of your busy lives with everything that is going on to participate in our budget process in various fashions in ways that you have participated. So thank you. Nearly 500 residents took the time to participate in various ways in this budget process, and we are very grateful to you. You gave us input and feedback during 3 community conversations, 18 community advisory committee meetings, an online survey, and through citizens' public communication at our public hearing last week and at other board meetings. And we also had public communication, of course, before this board meeting. We are stewards of your tax dollars. We understand that we are only holding those dollars in trust for you. And we take this fiduciary responsibility, this holding your dollars in trust, very, very seriously. We could not do our jobs effectively without your input, and we want to ensure that that we hear you and that we are being transparent, and that we are being the best possible stewards of your tax dollars that we're holding in trust with that fiduciary responsibility. We know that the demand for our healthcare services is increasing every year. We see more people moving into Travis County every year. We know that we have more people who either are of very low income or without insurance. And we have seen this, of course, even more so, those needs compounded this year due to COVID-19, that the pandemic, which is continuing. This board believes that every person in Travis County, in the entire county, deserves the best possible care. We want to provide the best possible care for the most people who fall within our jurisdiction in Travis County and within our low income and uninsured population. Doesn't matter where you live in the county. It doesn't matter who you are or where you're from or your characteristics. What matters is that you need our help and that we want to provide the best possible care to you as a basic human right. The Central Health Board of Managers will be approving a proposed tax rate of 11.0306 cents per $100 of taxable property value for the upcoming 2021 fiscal year. In the fiscal year 2020, the new property tax rate was also 6.9%. The proposed tax rate will result in an annual increase of about $25 for the average taxable homestead value of approximately $355,000, a little more than $2 a month, although that can vary, of course, depending on if your taxable value for your property is above that or, in fact, below that. The board does not take even $1 of this increase lightly. These are difficult times for everyone. We understand that. And it's our duty to be fiscally responsible, efficient, and effective while planning and providing health care for people who need our services most, people of very low income. As I said last week, we must consider the fact that more people need care, especially communities that have been disproportionately affected by COVID-19, such as the Latino and Black communities and other communities of color and people of low income. Taking all this into consideration, I believe that this is the appropriate tax rate that we will be approving next on our agenda, that we will need to continue to fund Central Health's mission. Dr. Zamore, did you want to make a comment at this point?
Madam Chair, Dr. Vice Chair, and managers, you know me, I don't say a whole lot of these meetings, I listen. But as a past chair, I can tell you there's nothing more we take seriously than planning our annual budget. And as a physician who's worked in this community for 30 years, I take seriously the caring for our neighbors, our family, our friends, our patients, to make sure they get the best care they can. The FY 2021 will support a $20 million increase to fund healthcare throughout the city and the county. Again, that's $20 million for more healthcare for our patients. You know, I can go through the whole list of where the money's going to be spent, but we've already gone through that. We don't need to go through that again. It's important to know that 96% of the money that we raise goes to healthcare. It doesn't get spent in administrative costs. It's 96%. The patients are getting what they need. And many of the people who are listening right now have heard me say, it's about the patients. It's making sure they get what they need. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Manager Zamore, for adding that. And I am particularly proud that we are seeing that 96% funds the delivery of healthcare. Manager Bell, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yes, I would. You know, as I mentioned at our last meeting, I really want to emphasize that this FY 2021 budget continues this board's commitment to expand the services in Eastern Travis County. We have made progress, but I know that some individuals would have liked the activities to have happened at a faster pace. However, knowing that we needed to perform our due diligence before commencing construction of permanent structures, we opened a clinic at Hornsby Bend and began offering services through our mobile clinic in Colony Park and Creedmoor to provide health services until the construction is completed. Please know that I understand that for residents living in these communities, progress hasn't happened fast enough, but we will get this done. Construction of new clinics in Eastern Travis County is planned to start in FY 2021. $28 million is included in our long-term capital budget to fund these 3 new clinics. However, I want to make one final comment before I turn the floor back to the chair. We've learned a lot during this pandemic, some good, some bad, and we've come to realize that the delivery of health services requires more than brick and mortar clinics. It's about expanding access through technology. We've been able to provide more access to healthcare than ever before with the help of technology, and we are able to eliminate some of the barriers to access, such as transportation, childcare, and others by offering medical appointments by phone and video. We're streamlining the delivery of specialty services by setting up e-consults where doctors can have virtual conversations with each other via video. And finally, we are deploying mobile clinics around the community and offering medical visits at home. If Travis County Commissioners approve this budget, we will do everything possible to make sure that everyone and every person in this community who needs care can access that care. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Manager Bell. And I am so happy that you discussed the importance of these focus areas in the eastern crescent of Travis County and our desire to move forward certainly in an effective manner, but you know, as in a time schedule that will get the bricks and mortar there and available. And I also want to thank you for noting that during COVID-19, we have seen an acceleration, we and others, of something that maybe some of us have desired for some time, and that is being able to more effectively use technology in ways to reach people who we were finding it difficult to reach and to provide health care to. And I know that that will continue. So thank you very much for your comments, Manager Bell. Is there anything else before we move on to our next item on the agenda? Okay, well, managers, thank you so much. Our next item on the agenda is agenda item number 4, to discuss and take appropriate action regarding Central Health's proposed fiscal year 2021 tax rate. A, total maintenance and operations tax rate. B, total debt service tax rate. And C, total ad valorem tax rate. Lisa Owens and Jeff Canota will be presenting, members. Note that this item is consideration of the revised tax rate for tax year 2020, which funds the Central Health fiscal year 2021 budget we just acted upon. This is the tax rate only and does not affect homestead tax exemptions for residents over the age of 65 and residents who are disabled, which have already been approved by the Travis County Commissioner's report. I'll turn this over to Lisa and Jeff now.
Thank you, Chair Greenberg. This motion is simply a request to approve our tax rate in the 2 components that make up the total tax rate, the maintenance and operations rate and the debt service rate. Our total tax rate that we have in this proposed budget is 11.0306 cents per $100 valuation. If you remember a couple of meetings ago, the board approved a maximum tax rate of 11.0306 cents. So this would be the maximum amount that you could approve this evening. With that, staff would request the board consider and approve the proposed tax rate, the M&O maintenance and operations rate, and the debt service rate as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. So members, first, do we have a motion on the maintenance and operations tax rate? Manager Bell.
For the maintenance and operations tax rate, I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.1097117 cents for the maintenance and operations, which is effectively a 4 6/10% increase in the tax rate.
Do we have a second to that motion? Manager Bell's made a motion. Manager Musaitif has seconded the motion. We will need a roll call vote, board members, for this. So staff will do the roll call vote.
Members, I will read each of your names in alphabetical order. When your name is called, please unmute your phone or computer and state your vote as A or yes to vote for the motion, nay or no to vote against the motion, or abstain if you wish to be counted as present and not voting on the motion. After you have stated your vote, I will repeat it and wait a few moments to ensure you do not wish to dispute the vote as I heard it. Please speak up if I have misstated your desired vote. With that, I will call the roll. Vice Chair Dr. Charles Bell.
Yes.
Vice Chair Dr. Charles Bell votes yes. Chairperson Sherry Greenberg.
Yes.
Chairperson Sherry Greenberg votes yes. Manager Shannon Jones.
Yes.
Manager Shannon Jones votes yes. Manager Maram Musaitif.
Yes.
Manager Maram Musaitif votes yes. Treasurer Julie Oliver.
Yes.
Treasurer Julie Oliver votes yes. Secretary Cynthia Valadez.
You were muted, Member Valdez.
Computer. Yes.
Secretary Cynthia Valadez votes yes. Manager Dr. Guadalupe Zamora.
Yes.
Manager Dr. Guadalupe Zamora votes yes. Manager Julie Zuniga.
Yes.
Manager Julie Zuniga votes yes. And that is it.
Thank you, members. We now will need a motion and a roll call vote for the debt service tax rate. Manager Bell.
For the debt service tax rate, I move that the property tax be decreased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.000589 cents, which is effectively an 11 7/10% decrease in the tax rate.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion by Manager Bell, a second by Manager Valadez, I think I see, yes? Okay. We will now have the roll call vote.
With that,
I apologize, Brianna. If I may clarify as well on the motion, it's $0.0 as Manager Bell said. Cents.
Sorry.
So
Thank
$0
you.
point. Sorry.
Thank you. No, very important. Do we need anything else clarified, or are we good now?
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we will now have the roll call vote.
okay, with that, I will call the roll. Vice Chair Bell.
Yes.
Vice Chair Bell votes yes. Chairperson Greenberg.
Yes.
Chairperson Greenberg votes yes. Manager Jones.
Yes.
Manager Jones votes yes. Manager Musaitif.
Yes.
Manager Musaitif votes yes. Treasurer Julie Oliver.
Yes.
Treasurer Oliver votes yes. Secretary Valadez.
Yes.
Secretary Valadez votes yes. Manager Zamora.
Yes.
Manager Zamora votes yes.
Thank you very much.
One more.
Oh.
Manager Zuniga.
Yes.
Manager Zuniga votes yes.
I apologize, Manager Zuniga. I got ahead of myself on the alphabet. Thank you. Appreciate it. I believe another motion is in order. Do we have a motion, Manager Bell?
Okay, I'm going to read this one right. For the total tax rate, which is the sum of the maintenance and operations and debt service tax rate, I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of $0.110306, which is effectively a 4 5/10% increase in the tax rate.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion. Was that? I'm sorry. Manager Zamora was the first one. Okay, so we have a motion by Manager Bell, and the first voice was a second by Manager Zamora. Thank you. We will now have the roll call vote.
Vice Chair Bell.
Yes.
Vice Chair Bell votes yes. Chairperson Greenberg.
Yes.
Chairperson Greenberg votes yes. Manager Jones.
Yes.
Manager Jones votes yes. Manager Musaitif.
Yes.
Manager Musaitif votes yes. Treasurer Oliver.
Yes.
Treasurer Oliver votes yes. Secretary Valadez.
Yes.
Secretary Valadez votes yes. Manager Zamora.
Yes.
Manager Zamora votes yes. Manager Zuniga.
Yes.
Manager Zuniga votes yes. And that is it.
I think that those are all of the required motions. Is that correct, Counselor?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So members, thank you very much. As with the budget, staff will be contacting each of you to obtain your signature in the best possible way on the tax resolution that is to be presented to the Travis County Commissioners Court. Thank you so much. We will now move to agenda item number 5, receive a report on fiscal year-to-date healthcare service expenditures made by and accept the August 2020 financial statements for Central Health and the Community Care Collaborative. I have down here Lisa Owens and Jeff Canota will be presenting, but I don't know if Lisa can speak at this point. So
I can't at all.
Okay.
I think,
now, Jeff, can you please take over, Lisa? Tea with honey, Lisa.
I'm trying.
You're stuck with me, and I realize it's late in the evening, so we will get that quick. Lisa, if you can pull up the financials real quick for Central Health. I'm just going to highlight the financials were included in your packet. So we're going to start at the Central Health balance sheet, and I'm just going to point out something that's going to happen down the road. So, you know, generally as a comment, Central Health is, you know, we've provided the financial statements. We'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone has at this meeting, or if you want to get with us at another time, we'll be more than happy to do that. I do want to point out, though, something that is large that could possibly happen at year end. If you remember, we own the Brackenridge campus, and when the hospital district was created, all of the assets on the campus were quote put on the books at fair market value. we're in the process of demolishing a lot of the campus, including the main hospital. And so we'll have to go through at year end, do some accounting work to consider if sufficient what's called impairment has resulted in the facilities. And if so, we may have significant write-downs of the amounts that you see under buildings and improvements. And so that's simply when the hospital was put on the books, it was put on the books at fair market value, and it was put on the books with a 50-year life. So obviously we haven't achieved the 50-year life. So there's a lot of value that's still unamortized value that's still on the books. So I just wanted to point that out, that that's a large number on our balance sheet. And we certainly will do some work. Didn't want there to be any surprises related to that item.
Thank you for noting that, Jeff.
Sure. I'm going to go ahead and skip over to the CCC financials. I think we've provided all the detail, and I want to point out a couple things that have happened on the CCC. So Lisa, if you could go one more slide. So in the CCC, you'll notice on Deseret revenue that we received almost $63.3 million of Deseret revenue. We're at 103% budget, so this was a recent payment. I don't think it's been on any financials since we've last reported the CCC. We are also evaluating a year-end process related around Deseret revenue and what the reserve is around Deseret metrics. We would anticipate that amount increasing. So it would increase on the deferred revenue line item that Lisa's pointing to, but the corresponding entry will decrease revenue. So I wanted to point out that that's kind of a fully recognized cash basis amount, and we'll be coming in and doing some further year-end work on that. And then the last item I will point out is the UT services agreement line item. The payment, the $35 million payment, was made, and that's reflected on August financial statements. So I know that was really fast. We have a lot of detail. I'm noting the late hour, and we'll be happy to answer any questions either now or at a later point.
Thank you, Jeff. Members, any questions now? I'm trying to scan. And Manager Valadez. You're on mute, Manager Valadez.
I was waving my hand no.
Oh, okay. And let me take just a moment of personal privilege, members, to apologize. I'm trying to do the best I can, but if I miss you in making a motion, or there's several people making one and I try to figure out who, or I don't see you, shout out. I'm not trying to overlook anyone in any way. Or be careful if you're just scratching your back and I think you're raising your hand. I'm sorry. Anyone else? Okay, I don't see anyone at this point. So we will move on then, managers, to item number 6. If there's no further questions or comments at this point.
Madam Chair, I believe there was a motion on that to accept
you're right.
Financial statements.
There is. Thank you. Thank you, David, for reminding me. So there is a motion that we need to make on this item, on item number 5. Manager Bell, thank you.
I move that the board accept the August 2020 financial statements for Central Health and the Community Care Collaborative as recommended by staff.
Is there a second? Manager Valadez, yes, seconds it. So there's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Any abstaining? Okay, I see none in opposition, no abstaining. Thank you, members. Thank you, Counselor, for reminding me. Item number 6 now. Take appropriate action on a Central Health Community Care Memorandum of Understanding Agreement related to reimbursement for COVID-19 expenses. Jeff Canota will be presenting again. Jeff?
Okay, thank you, Chair Greenberg. And again, I'll make this rather quick. There was a memorandum in your packet. What the memorandum is requesting action that the board take to authorize the Central Health President and CEO to execute this MOU between Central Health and Community Care. The MOU is simply an agreement that Central Health will pay for any unreimbursed cost that Community Care incurs around COVID-19 activities, and those activities can include testing, contact tracing, equipment, and supplies. Just as a reminder, Community Care has been the recipient of HRSA funds and a little bit of CARES Act funds. I believe it's around $5.8 million. In addition, they have applied for FEMA public assistance. And generally speaking, those eligible expenses are reimbursed at 75% of the cost. So this memorandum of understanding simply requests action to reimburse Community Care for any potential unreimbursed costs that they may occur during this COVID period. And it certainly, correlates, again, the public assistance piece correlates with the disaster declaration period that the governor has declared. The fiscal impact, we don't know what the fiscal impact of this would be, simply because there are numerous funding sources and numerous both activities that have already occurred and ongoing activities and future activities. But nonetheless, any funding as a result of this memorandum of understanding, the funding would be funded through the Central Health contingency reserve appropriation. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Chair Greenberg. I'll be happy to answer any questions that any board members may have.
Members, questions? Any questions at this time?
Sherry?
Yes, Manager Valadez.
Would you entertain a motion to approve?
Yes.
Okay, I move that we approve the Central Health Community Care Memorandum of Understanding Agreement related to reimbursement for COVID-19 expenses.
We have a motion. Is there a second? And Manager Oliver seconds. So there's a motion by Manager Valadez, a second by Manager Oliver. Any discussion? Manager Jones?
Is this something that just has to be decided tonight, I guess?
It would be preferable if it could be, but if it was the board's will, we could bring it back. Did you have a specific question?
My concern is that it sounds like it's somewhat open-ended, or maybe I didn't hear it right. And
No,
that was just sort of concerning to me.
You're absolutely right. It is open-ended from a funding standpoint. We think that between all the federal funding sources that the actual unreimbursed amount we're hoping will be fairly minimal, but we don't know how long this will go on, and we don't. I mean, you're right. It is open-ended.
So,
but what it does is it provides assurances to Community Care on their ongoing efforts that there's, financial backing related to their COVID-19 efforts.
Mr. Geeslin, did you want to add something?
I think to Manager Jones's question, yes, there is a big question mark hanging over what the ultimate impact is, but the idea is to reimburse responsibly. And so I'm just using this as a hypothetical, and Jeff can probably provide maybe some more specifics around it. But if there are certain amounts that we have not expended for primary care, by any measure, and it looks like we may not,
And obviously there's funds available then that could be used to offset certain expenditures. And so again, that's just a hypothetical. So the idea is to not go out. I mean, we could also pull, if this memorandum contemplates pulling from contingency reserves, but we're going to be mindful of what we're doing and what we have ahead before we overcommit and get into a situation where we get ourselves into a very difficult fiscal situation. We wouldn't do that.
Well, I would be supportive of it. It's just that if we could have some updated reporting from time to time to help us know where we are, that would be helpful for me.
Sure.
And I had a follow-up question. So, because I too, is there a time period? I think, Jeff, from you, that the time period is basically as long as we have these COVID orders in effect. Is that the time period?
Yes, as long as we're doing COVID-19 activities.
But is that as related to an order of the governor? I mean, what are we calling COVID-19 activities?
Well, so as it relates to FEMA, so there, you can't get reimbursed for any expenses outside the disaster declaration.
Right.
So if there are some, subsequent testing or whatever the case may be that's outside that period, again, community care has received some testing funds through HRSA, but if all of those funds were expired also, Central Health.
But my question is, does this have to be expenses that are incurred under the disaster declaration?
No.
No.
No, it would be both expenses, unreimbursed expenses incurred both in the disaster declaration period and outside of it, if that were the case. And,
okay.
And Mr. Geeslin was correct. We have a really good working relationship with community care, and I think we try to look at the activities that are occurring and make sure that both organizations are in sync related to those efforts.
Right, and I understand that we have been we've operated as one really on these efforts. So Mike, when you were saying that we would be responsible, what did you mean by that?
Well, I gave a hypothetical as an example, but let me just stay away from that. If you look at this budget resolution, it contemplates pulling out of contingency reserves. I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but I believe it's there in the fiscal impact section of the memorandum. Is that correct, Jeff?
Yes, that's correct. And you're right. So it's. Sorry, Mike. You're right. We would look at other sources if there were unused sources, but because I don't know the amounts, I have to at least identify a funding source at this moment, and that's what I'm pointing to.
But to Manager Jones,
we would look to. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chair Greenberg.
Manager Jones's question. I understand what you're saying, Mike. To Manager Jones's question, we will be getting follow-up reports on this, right?
Yes.
Yes, correct.
And how frequently will we be getting this?
Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's say, could we do that quarterly?
That makes sense to me.
As we get towards the end, I think it could be more frequently.
Okay,
we're still really putting there's a lot of paperwork involved with all this.
I understand. Okay.
That's for me to come back next month.
Yes, no, it has to be a veritable mountain of paperwork. Quarterly sounds reasonable, with more frequently at the end. All right, members, are we ready to, we have a motion, a second. Are we ready to vote?
Madam Chair, could I proffer a quick question to the Chair Manager Valdez? From the draft motion, there was a tail on that was also to authorize the Central Health President and CEO to execute the MOU.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you heard me say that.
I couldn't, yeah. So that was on your motion, just to clarify.
Yes, that was there.
Okay. I'm done. Okay. All right, members. So all those in favor of the motion vote aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Or yes, either way. Opposed, same sign. Seeing none in opposition, any abstaining, same sign. See no abstaining. Thank you, members. Okay, we have now arrived at item number 10. Confirm the next regular board meeting date, time, and location. Managers, our next Central Health Board of Managers meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, October 28th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. at the Central Health Administrative Offices, 1111 East Cesar Chavez Street, Austin, Texas, 78702, and/or remotely by video conference, depending on the status of the governor's disaster declaration and stay-at-home orders. And I want to again thank all of the public, all of the staff, and all of my colleagues on the Board of Managers for this most productive meeting. Thank you, everyone. At this time,
Chair Greenberg, if I may, the staff would like to thank the board. We know budget and tax rates are very taxing and demanding, and as volunteers, you all put a lot of hours and have sweat equity into this process, and we thank you very much, and thank you for your support.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have a motion at this time?
Move to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? There's a second by, who made the motion to adjourn, actually?
Cynthia.
Manager Valadez.
Valadez.
Second by Manager Oliver. Is that what I saw?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Hi.
Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Abstaining, none. Members, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, members.
Happy
Good night.
busy, safe,
Thanks, staff. Good job.
Yeah.